Welcome to the Caring Matters podcast. I'm Liz Tassone, host of the Caring Matters podcast, and I'm here today with Jeanette Jabour. And Jeanette is Adrian Dominican sister, and she has spent a lot of her career either facilitating caregiving support groups or she's been involved in family caregiving as well. She's also written a book, and we're going to talk a little bit about that sometime, and that's called Visiting the Elderly. But on this particular podcast, what we wanted to begin with is one thing that is true and near to Sister's heart is the fact that there be concern for both the caregiver and the care receiver. And so not only looking at some of the caregiver concerns, but also the loved one and how do they work together. So what are some of the ways, Sister, that you would say that a caregiver can enhance the caregiving process in the most positive way?
Okay, I think there are many ways, but one of them is by trying as much as possible to portray a positive attitude. And another one is by recognizing and appreciating the unique gifts of each person. The caregiver has gifts, the care receiver has gifts, and sometimes I think it always is good to look at both of those. This one, I always think placing oneself in the recipient place is a very good idea, and that's easier said than done.
Walking a mile in the other person's shoes.
It's easier said than done, especially if the caregiver is exhausted, if he or she is in a time crunch, pretty much needing understanding themselves. So often the caregiver may overdo the care in order not to be or look neglectful, and consequently becomes worn out in the process. So the recipient may not let the caregiver know sometimes if they're doing something they themselves can do, and so the caregiver might overdo it. And the care receiver, the recipient, will let them do that because they don't want to lose the caregiver. I've seen that happen a lot. So pacing one's care helps. Showing love and care in other ways besides doing helps. It eases the stress. Then both parties relax more and possibly build a more positive relationship.
Okay. And one of the things you like to talk about is mutual respect. And I know what you just mentioned is about being mutually respectful of the other. Is there anything else about that you want to make sure caregivers are aware of?
Well, I think the caregivers, I think they sometimes automatically think they're showing respect just by being there, and sometimes really showing acts of respect for the person, giving compliments, being positive about whatever is going on. And that's, again, easier said than done. Because when a person's really tired, the last thing you think about is giving someone else a compliment. But I think it helps, it eases the situation a lot. Does that answer your question?
It does, it does.
Okay.
And what about the concept of clarifying expectations? So how does it contribute to a positive experience for the receiver and giver of care?
I think clarifying expectations is probably one of them, because there are many, one of the biggest aspects of caregiving. It reduces the possibility of having a negative experience. If I know what you expect and you know what I expect. I think it helps in the area of misinterpreting what's going on, because sometimes it helps if you see an opportunity from many angles rather than focusing on one thing. So to clarify what is going on helps the situation a lot.
So are you saying just really stop and ask, or say, here's what I expect will happen today or in this relationship, and to ask the same question?
Some questions to ask are, am I expecting too much? Am I not expecting enough with the caregiver? Am I expecting things to happen my way, on my calendar and my time? And as circumstances change, I think we have to have a re-evaluation of expectations. Because you keep looking at them, you can't use the same ones from situation to situation. So I think it's good to re-evaluate. And for example, Dad expected to continue driving forever because his eyesight's really good. But what making quick decisions was no longer one of his assets. But his eyesight's good. The whole neighborhood knows it, his daughter knows it, his son knows it, the doctor knows it, but Dad thinks he's doing very well. So to clarify along the way would help the whole community be safe. Not just Dad and not just the family. Or a mother expects to see the daughter every day. However, the caregiver is unable to visit every day because of her own housekeeping duties or responsibilities or job needs, family needs. And at times it might be good to clarify what the expectations are, because mother might be happy with someone else coming in. Can't assume that I'm supposed to be doing it all. That maybe someone else would be in, and her mother might enjoy someone else coming in, and that might be difficult on a daughter. So clarifying expectations, I think, along the way is a good idea.
So you're saying to actually verbalize with each other, to take some time.
Not to assume.
Okay.
To assume.
Make a point of sitting and having that conversation. And sometimes that might be a little uncomfortable topic to bring up, but it will probably avoid a lot of hairy situations in the future.
I think it might be difficult to bring up, and yet again it might make it easier, because then both parties know what's to be expected, and you don't overdo it or you don't underdo it. Clarity is the key here.
It's kind of similar to any relationship, even if you have an employee working for you or something, to have those times where you just sit down and kind of write out expectations and write out those kind of things. So it just enhances.
I think probably in our own lives do that. It would be a good idea to do that with yourself. So if you get in the habit of doing that, maybe it would become a habit when you're caring for someone else.
Yeah. Very good point. Many caregivers find it difficult to listen. So how do you think listening plays a part in enhancing a relationship and in the process of caregiving?
Listening to another and being listened to, I think they're both great gifts. And it's much easier for someone to cook, a caregiver probably to cook an entire meal than to sit quietly and listen to mother or dad. So listening involves discipline. It involves respecting the speaker. It involves withholding a judgment. It involves acceptance, not minimizing needs. Listening, holding what is held in confidence, that's very important. It involves clarifying. It involves using the gift of silence at times. Sometimes it's better not to respond. Those are some of the things. Parents may have had the skill of listening to their children, but possibly the tide turns when the older child tries to decipher what a parent wants. Did that make sense coming out that way?
Well, I think what you're saying, let me see if I'm listening well, sister. If we really, we're used to as a child, the parent being kind of telling us things in a more directive way, maybe directing us, and now you're saying sometimes we just have to ask the question and sit quiet and let them...
and see what the parent is saying. Is that coming out right?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Because I think that's a skill in itself, and I think it might be a lost art at times.
I think so, yeah.
And just that clarification back, even what we're doing now, just to make sure that we understand each other. That's just part of the process you're talking about.
And I don't think that's done a lot. I think we often assume what we either hear, or we're comparing it to what was said the last time we heard that comment. Is this what I'm doing now? Mother always expects this. Does she expect it now, or have things changed? So clarifying along the way, I think, helps a lot.
And there was a part of that where you mentioned the judgment call. If you can reserve judgment and truly listen to someone just as how they're speaking, rather than jumping through all the things that are going through your mind and feeling the need to express yourself. If you can, that's a true art.
It's easier to write on paper than it is to actually do.
Absolutely
It
true.
is.
Very good. But you're saying if you can take that time, do that,
It helps.
the rewards are
For
great.
both.
Right.
The rewards for both parties are good.
Yeah. And that's a skill that you have the time to develop with someone
Mhm.
in the caregiving relationship, if you can.
But it eases this whole situation. And I think whatever our first topic was here that we're
Mhm.
doing, trying to clarify from both, having a mutual caregiving concerns, you should make it easier on both parties.
Mhm. I think that's the heart of what you've said this entire podcast is that this listening piece is something that's going to help both parties, the
Right.
loved one, the caregiver,
Right,
and to be intentional about it.
right.
To be intentional about taking the time to listen, to ask for clarity of concerns and put the expectations out
And
there.
it might take time to work at that, but it's worth the time.
Okay,
It's worth the effort,
okay.
I think.
And she knows because she has facilitated over 500 caregiving support groups. So
I've
she
listened to
knows
a
what
lot
she's
of
talking
people.
about. Yeah.
A lot of people.
Well, we might want to pick this up a little bit more on
Okay.
part 2 of
Okay.
this topic. But for now, we're going to close this, and I just want to thank our sponsors who are listed in the corner of this webpage, and you can check those and even click on those, and you can get to their websites. Meantime, I want to thank Sister Jeanette Jabour for
Thank you.
your insight on this topic. Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
having me. It's wonderful.
And always remember that caring matters.